you had brought up the AIDA principle, right?
Hmm.
AIDA. It's the attention, interest, desire, and action. So you brought that up and just kind of did some things there. But when we think about this conversation and generating attention, like
Hmm.
there's one girl on Instagram, she's a trainer coach on there, and she is loud and proud Republican, Trump, like CrossFitter, very, very far right stuff, right? And I'm like, and I don't mind it. I'm not that far extreme on anything for the most part, not for fear of like judgment, but just because that's just not my belief system. But she has a lot of followers, a lot of engagement, a lot of things, and it just comes down to obviously generating that attention. So you look at a Under Armour, you look at a Nike, you look at any of those companies, you look at Apple and Think Different and all those things, everybody has their followers that start somewhere, and it just comes down to how do you garner the attention in order to start being able to send messages or get that person to go through your world, right? So making sure people know who you are and what you stand for, while probably uncomfortable, is important when it comes to building attention. And if you're
Hmm.
sitting there and you're always just neutral and splitting the line and never picking a direction, not many people are probably going to see you because they don't actually know what you stand for, and they're not going to be willing to just go like, oh, okay, I support this person, insert various reason why.
Yeah. And I think there's something else that's been on my mind with social media specifically. And, obviously with, the Republican girl that you mentioned, I think organizations that are using the AIDA model, and it is majority like a marketing kind of an acquisition type of framework. And we'll get into that here in a second. But there are ethical considerations. And so with the advent of AI and like obviously how much people are leveraging that these days, there was a story of an Indian medical student. He went in there and he was like, "Hey, I need some money to pay for school, super broke and obviously in a different part of the world." They suggested that he create this female type of avatar, and he had already done it. And then he was like, "Well, how can I monetize this further?" And it made her super right leaning because it said, MAGA men, older men have more disposable income, they're more loyal, yada, yada. And so, like, the whole persona, which is this guy talking in it, kind of imposes a attractive, physically fit young lady on there that's like, hey, Jesus, whatever, just like a bunch of still pictures. And this guy made hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough to pay for his entire medical school ride. And he did this for probably, I think, like a year or something like that, until he came out and was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. That's what exists today. And so how do you really establish yourself as a reputable brand? How do you, kind of like highlight the quirkiness of what you have going on? I think that those are important things to consider outside of the conversation we're having with the AIDA model. But from an acquisition attention perspective, like these four letters are really helpful to think about how to cultivate the right audience almost, and how to get them to, kind of navigate down the pipeline to actually earn the opportunity to service them.
This student that you're talking about, was he open about the fact that it was
Oh my
AI
God.
as it was AI and he was doing the thing, or did he fully pretend to be this person to go earn money some way, shape, or form, and eventually come clean on the other side?
22-year-old Indian medical student created a fake AI generated influencer named Emily Hart to fund his studies, earned thousands of dollars a month, used Google Gemini to generate the persona and content, targeted American conservative audiences on social media, sold AI generated photos, subscribe. I think he was actually on, I think he got her on OnlyFans or something.
So it sounds like he wasn't truthful up front,
No,
which,
probably not. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
You put his face on that page, like immediate
yeah, which,
unsubscribe.
like, and it's funny, I've been using a lot more AI on my social media stuff,
Uh-huh.
and my views, my interactions, my engagement is going way up, right? Like crazy. But I'm also being very forward on the fact that like it's AI. And oh, by the way, like if you look at it, you should also be highly aware that it's AI, right? Like there's no, I'm not trying to fake it from that perspective. And I think leveraging AI to gather attention is not a bad thing as long as you own it. And there are a lot of people out there who are not owning it, which is sad. At some point in time, it's going to be problematic. It's already
Mhm.
starting to become problematic, but
Yeah.
like using AI to help you, not a bad thing. Making AI like the thing and making people believe in something completely separate, that's the problem.
When I really back up for a second, I think like the nature of social media was originally supposed to be a social connection platform or a place for people to kind of practice art in a lot of ways. Like, how do you cobble stories together? How do you create certain visuals? How do you architect a brand persona stuff? And I think that we lose a lot of the cogency despite the coherency increase, where coherency is like a function of things make sense. Like a plus, like all cats have four legs, all dogs have four legs, so all dogs are cats. Like that would be a semblance of coherency or coherence. And then when we think of cogence, it's like that's not quite the case. While it logically might make sense, the outcome or the conclusion isn't substantively supported by any kind of evidence. And so when we're thinking about like the whole nature of AI and how that's really making this a mess for people to navigate, I think that understanding these principles is really important. So you know when you're getting got, and then you can get the others before they get you, so you don't get got and get.
So big one first, attention, right? Very first thing is people need to even become aware that you exist. Like that, that's the first step through all of this. One of the notes that you had made, Andrew, which I think is probably out of everything you shared, the piece out, I'm like, you know what, that's a really good piece to talk through here, is everybody looks at a funnel, the process in which people go through becoming aware, the stages of awareness around you, like all that stuff as a very linear thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you, me, you guys listening, every single thing when it comes to marketing and purchasing, for the most part, especially when it's an investment for someone, so not just $15 to throw away, is going to be something circular in nature. They're going to cycle back. It's not going to be a one instance of let me get attention, then move through the interest, create some form of desire, and then they're going to go ahead and take action. Like that's just not how it works. You have to prepare to bring people through a journey, which is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step back, 2 forward, right? It's how that's going to be. So I just want to highlight that piece because none of this is super linear unless you're selling literally a $20 thing. That's going to be more of an emotional buy, and people will like see it and then, okay, cool, yeah, buy it, take action. So keep that piece in mind. But generating attention is, how can you go out and get somebody to become aware that you're there and you might have a solution to their problem or whatever the thing might be? It really comes down to that stuff. So attention is the first thing, right? There's lots of ways to get attention, and that's the thing that you need to go out. You can use AI. You can go stand on a corner and spin a sign. You can go stand on a corner and be naked. You can go put funny TikTok skits together to get people to become aware of you. You can create when you eat meat, or when you eat meat and carbs, or when you eat meat and carbs and sweet potatoes. And then you're like, but aren't carbs and sweet potatoes but blah, blah, blah. Like, you can do those things. All of those gather attention. It just comes down to how do you gather the right attention of people who are potentially have a greater potential odds of buying whatever it is you're selling them, right? So that's like big thing number one is how do you do that?
Yeah. I always kind of liken attention to getting people to kind of nod a little bit, because the bridge between attention and kind of the next one we'll talk about is having some sense of relatability. I mean, think about someone that's standing on a street corner as you're parked there and they're trying to sell you a hammer. You're like, what is this? I don't need this. It's just not relevant. It's not something that's relatable. It's just frankly, same thing with any kind of ads. And so until you get people to focus on something to the degree that they can ascertain or understand, yeah, hey, that's similar to a pain point that either I have or someone else in my world has, you're not going to get any interest, and you're just screaming into the void. So when people come onto social media, and obviously we're talking about social media because it's probably one of the biggest ways that people are encouraged to build an audience and to generate revenue. And, I think we're very much in a content economy, but until you stop saying how many grams and how many kilojoules a gram of carbohydrate is going to give your body, and why people should not worry about getting toned, or like all these other little things that are worn out and don't make any sense, or are just like super nuanced niche pieces of information that only people with an understanding already would appreciate, like you're not going to capture that interest, which is going to make your life really hard. And it's going to seem like no one wants what you have, but you've just done a really poor job of cultivating a lot of that attention that's necessary to move into the next step.
So after attention, it just comes down to moving from that side of, all right, I got your attention. You got to create some form of interest, right? And that's where, like you mentioned, trying to sell somebody a hammer when they're actually looking for a bottle of water or to go to the bathroom or some version of that, where you now need to meet them where they're at and understand kind of what's going on. This is where we tend to get, like, we do have somebody's attention, and it goes down this whole like, oh, I'm going to teach you, and here's my certification. We're doing this 78-step thing. And like, you almost start to bore them where you think it's relevant to them. It's just not overly relevant. This is where having something that usually sounds different, your unique mechanism, your specific IP, whatever it is that you've kind of packaged, but also driving that and connecting it to their outcome, understandable for them, not grams and kilojoules and all these things, but rather we have a unique way to eat, so you can go ahead and consume all the pizza you want during 1 4-minute meal on a Saturday. Like, it just comes down to correlating what you do to what they want, but telling them the process in a simple, refined, easy way, and really almost mitigating risk through that conversation. Most people today, it's like, if I do this, is it really going to work? I tried this one thing or did all these things, it doesn't work. Like, make it make sense to them would be the way I would kind of angle that side, the I side of this.
Well, and I think there's a story of one time Grant Cardone got me. I can't believe Grant Cardone got me. I'm not a big Grant Cardone fan, but he got me. And it was Thanksgiving, I remember, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And he's talking about, hey, if you want to get super wealthy and all this other stuff, he's like, one of the easiest ways to do it. And I'm like, I'm interested because, like, everyone wants passive income these days. Most people don't understand the steps necessary to get there. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is a hack. Hacks don't seem to work often. So sells me, I think it's like $100 on how to buy apartment buildings. So you show up to this webinar where he's talking about how great it is and how it can change your life and, kind of some of the mechanical items on how to go about that. And so caught my attention with the outcome. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Kind of talks around the how to do it, but doesn't give you the specific formula, the recipes, yada, yada. And I think he offers like maybe some kind of smart sheet or something like that. He gives you a resource, right? So now you're slowly getting reeled in and you're getting increasingly interested because he's just kind of going on. And he's obviously this uber successful individual saying how he's doing it and driving the, transferring that interest into head nods. And then on the back end of that, he gets you to do a hand raise. And like, hey, who wants this thing? And you hand raise because now he's developed the next thing that we're going to talk about here in a second. And so I'm like, oh, that's great. $1,000 for his course on how to buy an apartment building. And I'm like, all right, sure. Money back guarantee, yada, yada, no questions asked. And so I'm like, okay, I'll poke around a little bit. So I buy the thing. Bro, none of that shit was useful at all. Not a single bit. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, that sucks. And so to kind of think about the mechanistic elements here of like, if you're driving people's attention and you're cultivating this interest, right, you get enough people to know about your thing and they want a little bit more of it, that might be an opportunity for you to take them from a social media platform into an email list where they can get more information, or to even convert them and, drive them to a webinar or something where they can have like an intimate, experience that's a little bit longer, maybe a live version. I mean, Steve, you're really good at putting these things together. I think you're 5-6x the industry average. I mean, what are your thoughts on webinars as an interest capture? Or, how do you think that anything plays into that?
It's funny. I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning, literally mutual connection from clients. And he's like, hey, I want to go out and start running ads to a webinar and try to convert people on my offer. He's like, what should I do? And he posted that to Facebook. So I commented, he messaged me, and then lo and behold, the conversation happened. And I was like, well, I have 3 different clients running webinars. One's shitting the bed, one's crushing it, and the other one's making their money back, and it's kind of worth it, but it's a lot of effort. And there's a singular difference between all 3. And that difference is very much they understand the point in which they're running the webinar for. They know why they're doing it. They know what the goal is, and they're doing it in such a way that it makes sense for them. And that's really like the main thing. And he's like, oh, well, like, what do you mean they know what the goal is? I was like, well, the one that's failing is hoping to generate cold traffic and sell them on this webinar 3 days later. The one that's doing okay is spending some money on cold traffic, but really hammering their audience very hard. They're focusing on the audience. People have been circling around them. They're using organic and email a lot. The one that's winning the most has a big, strong emotional tie, and they run a webinar twice a week. The people who show up to their first webinar on average have a 0.3 conversion rate to purchases. People who become a lead.
3% of people?
No, 0.3%.
Oh,
the first
wow.
webinar, 0.3%.
Okay.
The people who show up to a subsequent webinar, 1.05% conversion, 3.5 times more conversion is happening. They're spending $400,000 a month and things like that. So like, just it's bigger. But they learned, well, if I run 2 a week, shit, I'll get all the people to convert on the subsequent ones.
Yeah.
The one that's failing, they do 1 every couple of weeks and think it's going to win. So it's like they understood why they were running it. And then that one that we were like, all right, 1.05% on the subsequent ones, everything else, how do we make this better? We didn't add more webinars. We went in and adjusted the things we were doing between the webinars. And now this month, we're actually getting about a 1.47, just shy of 1.5. And our goal is 1.55, which on a business and revenue wise, that's a 50% increase by not adding any extra spend. And all we're doing is adding in 1 30-minute extra call per week. Like, so all this to say, they understand why they're doing it. And they're going from this attention and interest phase into what is phase 3. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's intentional. They understand what they're doing and why they're doing it to the person that they're doing it with, providing the value and creating the emotional response they want with them at the right time. That is now causing them to finally do the thing that they want them to do.
Yeah. And so, kind of thinking about how this relates, if anyone on this, people should be understanding what a funnel is, which I think is the same as landing page, which I think is the same as a website, but just like a guided journey. I don't know. You should listen to one of my ignorant questions on one of the earlier podcast episodes. I think it's like in the 80s or the 90s. But, like there's a very specific journey that people are trying to go down. And it's usually something that is like a little more emotional, followed by some more informational and logical type of appeals. And then obviously, kind of allowing and interspersing specific calls to action and different items on that kind of continuous scrolling page. But I think that when you transfer this stuff, it's the same with any kind of behavioral aspect of how do you make it so that it is important. And if you haven't listened to the problem awareness episode, and we really talk through that, and I think that's a good parallel for this because they kind of start to blend together, but your ability to make someone interested in something is going to determine the ability or the likelihood or the kind of the buying temperature, if you will, of how likely they are to move down further into and closer to taking action on that thing. But, I think that this is probably a good opportunity for us to maybe have some last thoughts on this, the first part of the AIDA model. And then you guys are going to have to subscribe and make sure you turn your notifications on to hear part 2, where we really dive into the other stuff of, the D and the A here. But I mean, Steve, you got any last thoughts on AI?
I mean, it really just is garner attention, and to some extent you should be polarizing to be your authentic self, attract the right people. I'm not saying go out and just be polarizing for the giggles and shits of it. It's not authentically you, but go out there so people can see you and talk to you and understand you and hear you. And then from there, tie in whatever it is that captured attention into their interest and talk through that. Your certifications, your credentialing, your years of experience and all the things, those usually aren't the piece that's going to sign and seal that deal. I'm not saying it's not important and you shouldn't bring it up if it's relevant for the conversation, but it is something where you usually are so proud of all this stuff you've done that that's not what people care about. So
look at my hand turkey. Look at my hand turkey. They're like, that's not going to the museum, buddy.
All that stuff combined then brings it into creating the emotional response we want, which is what we're going to talk about in part 2 of this. So tune into that one. Thanks for joining us today on Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. Today, we broke down the first 2 steps of the AIDA model. This is important in your marketing, in your sales. So make sure you go back to the beginning here, watch it all if you've missed any of it, and stay tuned for part 2, because understanding this is going to immensely help you moving forward when it comes to marketing your business. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the episode, throw any comments down below.